Welcome to the Bitcoin Business Podcast put on by Sovereign. As always, I'm your host, Brandon Karpeles. We are going to be going through a little rebranding coming up here in the coming weeks. So as we found at Sovereign that our customers are not only businesses, but a lot of business owners who happen to be individuals and high net worth individuals who may own businesses, and we may come to them through that avenue. We're just finding more and more that at the end of the day, we're actually dealing with individuals, and the business part of the equation is kind of ancillary, and then something we help these individuals deal with on the side. And so we just want to make sure that we're labeling ourselves appropriately here, and in terms of what we're actually doing. And it's just what we're doing at Sovereign has morphed well beyond just strictly sort of small, medium-sized businesses and that cohort. We do help them out. We do still service them. We provide those services, but we find ourselves more and more developing personal relationships with individuals, and that being really the core of who we're helping. So next time I do this podcast, it might be a different intro. So just want to let people know that that's coming. All of that being said, I have a guest with me today who has a space in the business space and many other things, really a jack of all trades, kind of like a Bitcoin renaissance man. And that is Brian Hirschfield, aka Fundamentals. So welcome, Brian. And I guess first and foremost, I don't really, in sort of the legacy fiat world, we have this idea of you have to be a carpenter, you have to be a businessman, you have to be whatever. And Bitcoin kind of breaks that down as you sort of become a jack of all trades in all these different areas. But what do you see yourself first and foremost? A mathematician, a Bitcoin for corporations guy? How do you sort of rank file your different roles in the space here?
Great question. I don't think I've ever really thought about it like that. However, if I had to answer, by the way, thank you. Thank you for that introduction.
Of course.
I would say first and foremost, I'm a leader of men, and I think I'm here to do more. If you told me I had to choose between one of two things, gun to my head, build people into their best potential, the best people they can be, versus like end the Fed, I'll tell you I'm here to build people. That's an unpopular opinion in Bitcoin, and it's not like I don't want to end the Fed or anything like that. But what am I doing here on the ground? Not by reading books or by, doing, whatever it is I'd otherwise be doing in my life. What am I doing here? Like, why am I building everything that I'm building? It's to build people. I do believe that. I believe that as humans, we're not quite ready for Bitcoin yet, and it's like it's just waiting for us. It's waiting for us to get better, so that everything everybody dreams is possible can actually happen. Right? It has to get but we need the upgrade first.
Yeah.
So I'd say that is my primary purpose.
Yeah, you bring up an interesting point, right? Like all these, yes, we want to end the Fed, and we see Bitcoin as a way to do that. But at the end of the day, we really can only control what we're doing. And is what we're doing short of, I don't know, being one of the Rothschilds or one of the Warburgs or one of the Rockefellers or something? Like, is it even realistic to think we could have any hand in ending the Fed from sort of a top-down, I'm going to direct my life to this type way? Or is it more of a grassroots mobilizing, and then what is my highest and best utility within organizing people and companies and sort of the movement I'm working on around me?
Yeah, so I would say the question is what calls you into being? What calls a person into being? When I think of ending the Fed, I'm called to maybe store some of my wealth in an asset that they can't touch, but that's pretty much where it ends. I don't really have much more to do after that. So there's not much more I can do to end the Fed than that one act. Whereas building men and upgrading us as humans and really, trying to discover our potential, that calls me into being. Like, that gets me out of bed every day. mean, it's really cliche and it can be pretentious. So you have to be very careful with this stuff, right? Just like ending the Fed can be pretentious, right? Well, and I'm sure there are people who are called into being by that. I'm just not. I'm called into being by being on the ground and helping people win, and being awesome and being inspired by other people.
Well,
That's just what does it.
yeah, I feel the same way. You also have a situation where what you're inspired to do may not work monetarily, or where you're actually doing something where it's like, I love doing this. It gets me out of bed in the morning, but like, am I able to provide for my family? Am I able to, not be living on a tent on Lakeshore Drive in Chicago? Like, there's other considerations to take into place, and at the end of the day, that's it. Back to the Austrian school, why everyone has to make individual choices for what they're doing, and then you hope that you're able to find a match of what am I passionate about, what do I care about with other people, and then how do I make it work in sort of a free economy.
Yeah, I have seemed to earn the right to try to be this person. I've done that by making enough money to leave, to be able to pursue things that are a risk. So I'm able to do this by relying on my savings. And, the question really is, it's either how long can I do this for how long before I have to consider the Lakeshore Drive. The Philly version of Lakeshore Drive is really bad. Everybody in the world knows about it. But it's where we're going to hit this really early in the podcast. But there is for me, a bit of a trust in God right now that it is going to work out. I don't know if it's going to provide a monetary reward, but I do have this trust that if God wants me to do this work, I will find a way to do it. I will find a way to not have to leave it and go back to the old deal with the devil that I used to have. And you have faith every day that you are doing what is inside of you, that this is what God wants. And you really have to have that faith and belief and that conviction. And it's a lot of work to be worthy of that.
It's hard. It's so funny you said that, because this is basically how I came into Sovereign. There was a bunch of stuff going on at my old job. It was like, situation has become untenable. The deal with the devil was like, it was truly becoming a deal with the devil. And it was like, I'm just sitting here to collect more loyalty points to redeem for Bitcoin. And it's like, do I really want to keep doing this? And then it was like, door, open. Like, hey, are you going to go do this? And it's like, yes, I'm going to go do this. This is what, I prayed about it for a year, 2 years, really. Like, God, what am I doing here? What do you want from me? And then it was like, it was just like praying, waiting. And then all at once it was like, door closed, this door's open, go do it. And, right before we recorded this podcast, I did my daily devotion, and we have a lot of good stuff going on at Sovereign. But listen, we're a startup. Like, this is, to your point, I had enough savings to go take a flyer on something and go do this, and have a very supportive family and wife and everything else that comes along with it. But we're finally really starting to turn a corner here, and it's just like, I was, God, is this what you want me to do? I think I'm where you want me to be, just keep letting me know this is where you want to be. And what have my devotions been on all 3 days this week? Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Just so happens the author of my devotional is talking about Ruth and her dedication to her mother-in-law, Naomi. So for people that don't know, Naomi and her two daughters-in-law, Ruth and I'm drawing a blank on the other daughter-in-law. They left Bethlehem because there was a famine. It was hard to find food, and basically God was telling them, "Don't do this. Don't leave this. I will provide. Trust in me. I got your back." And her husband, Elameshesh, or I'm probably butchering that name. You're more of the Hebrew scholar than I am. And their two husbands.
I was born to two Jewish parents. That's the extent of my scholarship.
I'm a quarter Jewish, so that's the extent of my Jewish scholarship. So, anyways, they leave and they go to Moab, and Moab's full of food and full of all, life and energy and all this stuff. But what happens? Their soul becomes corrupted. They turn into the Moabites. They start living the hedonistic lifestyle. They start turning from God. They forget their roots, all these other things, and eventually all the men die. And Naomi gets to a point where she realizes that, okay, God, message received loud and clear, we need to return. And there was still no guarantee that anything would happen. And, Ruth, they come to a point where leaving Moab, Ruth, both the daughters-in-law say, we're never going to leave you. And Naomi basically says, don't be so foolish, stay here, don't do that, I'm an old hag. And the other daughter-in-law says, okay, yeah, good point. And Ruth says, no, I'm sticking by you. I believe your God is my God, and I'm coming back. And what happens? They get to Bethlehem, they come back, and they see the first signs of the barley harvest. And it's God basically saying, look, here's the food I promised I would provide. Trust me now. And Naomi basically has Jesus wasn't around in the Old Testament, but a come to Jesus moment of, God was harsh with me because I didn't listen to him. And it's just like, it's crazy, this confluence of you pray about these things, you think about these things, hey, God, are you calling to me this? And it's like, hey, I gave you 3 straight days in a row. What other validation do you need? Like, don't stray from what I have you doing. Don't deviate. And to your point, you don't want to sound cliche. You don't want to sound douchey. You don't want to sound pious. And it's like, so how do you sort of balance the unknown and then explain to other people that don't have the same experience you do? Only you experience that personally. And then, like convincing other people that like, no, trust me, I'm doing the Lord's work. I'm literally doing what God wants me to do. And it's like, yeah, well, a lot of people in prison said the same thing before they shot their wife. So, good luck explaining that one.
It is interesting though, because it's like when I'm coming, I feel like I'm in this place where I'm still searching for the big win. So I'm coming from I'm hashing, looking for a block here. Right. And that is an inherently humble place. So maybe there's not a lot to worry about in terms of how I'm communicating this at the moment. But when the win does come, I think that's when it maybe gets challenging. And maybe I don't talk about it once I win, right? Or once once those wins come and I get the harvest and all of whatever, if my dreams do happen, maybe I don't, I'm talking about something else or what, who knows? But I think that in this humble place, maybe it's not as dangerous. But it's actually really interesting. So my wife is Catholic, and I've agreed to go to church with her, and which is not typical for a guy born to 2 Jewish parents who'd never considered doing anything like that in his life before. And I heard this Ruth story this weekend. I assume
Are you serious?
The time? Yes.
Wow. Okay.
The Ruth Naomi story. I heard it in a different context where she thought she wasn't going to be able to have any sons, and she was really resentful of God, and it was okay, and it was almost okay and appropriate because even though she was resentful, she still maintained faith about it, and eventually was rewarded. And that's the angle. That's the angle I heard it from. But it's wild that I went to church with my wife and heard the story, and now we're talking about it.
Wow. There you go.
It's pretty cool.
And I'm reading about it and decided to bring it up on this podcast. And you're gonna tell me that there's something not greater than us, that there's not a spiritual.
Tells me I'm on the right track.
Yeah,
I'm on the right track and have good friends.
That's crazy. And another thing I normally would have pointed to and I still want to get back to, but I was like, no, the Ruth thing's too important. I got to get to that. Is what you were talking about in terms of, okay, we've had the savings, how long, does it go, blah, 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 all that stuff. what's so messed up is only fiat creates that. Like the way of the world used to be, you could save your money in gold, and then people would take vacations for years. They would go find something else. They would work on inventions. They would become academic, and they would go study things. They would go teach other people. And people took actual, quote unquote, breaks from their whatever they were doing to go do something else because the money wasn't being devalued. And it's almost like we've been brainwashed into this situation. Not brainwashed, but just forced into this situation and brainwashed.
I think it's brainwashed and not forced.
Yeah.
Because
Okay.
I think it's appropriate. I think it's appropriate for the most part to worry about your financial standing. It's appropriate in the time we live in, obviously.
Yeah.
But with the psyop that people have, by the way, first of all, before I even get into this, I have to tell you, like, I have listened to you talk about your old job, and it's like a deal with the devil for me to even listen to how miserable you were at it. Like, I at least enjoyed what I did, but it again required so much like disloyalty and required dishonesty that just didn't, and it ruined my enjoyment of it. But what you were doing, oh my God,
Yeah.
like I get it,
Yeah.
completely get it. But the psyop that for some reason, you and I both know a lot of people who could take the time off, who could do it indefinitely. There are a lot of people who have made a lot of money, and there's either one of two problems. One is they lived beyond their means and they're up to their necks in debt. If it's not actual loan debt, it's like my kids go to $60,000 a year private school type debt. Or
I have four cars I don't need. And
yes, I like taking helicopters to New York because I don't like driving there. Things like that. So like I think that, or sometimes it's actually a maybe it's a medical situation. Or there's something that, like, I like being this comfortable, and the only way to the only way to continue to support this lifestyle is to continue to do it, right? Mm-hmm. And my family's counting on me because I've sold them on the ability to live this way as the value, right? But there's a lot of people who have just millions of dollars in the bank. They've got their kids' college paid for. They've got everything absolutely sewn up, and they can't leave. And that's what I find fascinating. They can't leave because really there's a stigma. There's a stigma about, like, what do you do, and answering that question. And when, like, they ask your wife what your husband does for a living, she doesn't want to squirm and apologize for what you don't do. Right.
Yep.
And I see a lot of people stuck for that. And that's like that to me is the saddest thing. Like, you could go. There's nothing stopping you. The jail door is open. You just won't leave.
Well, our good friend Avi Burra talks about that all the time, right? Like, you made your own prison. That you have the key to it. You're just not unlocking the door and walking out of it. And yeah, there is it's interesting. Someone put a question out on Nostr. They said, "Oh, I'm miserable at my job, and I want to leave." And he said, "Give me some responses." And I was just very candid in my response that it's liberating, but it's not a panacea. Like, you're not just going to find enjoyment in the Bitcoin industry, doing what you're doing now just for a Bitcoin company. Like, that's not solving the problem. At the same time, like, there is some value to safety and security, and understand that you're heading out, like our Bugle friends like to say, onto the frontier, as a pioneer. Mm-hmm. And you better be prepared for that. So just be ready for that. And while it is exciting, while I absolutely believe I made the right decision, and many others made the right decision, I think Avi made the right decision. He was in a very similar boat to me. He was like 3 months behind me. We had almost identical sort of tracks in that we took. But there there is a mental barrier in some people, to your point, where like they're never going to overcome it. Like they won't do it. Like if they left and things got a little tough or weren't going the right way, or maybe some questions on the home front, things like that, like they're going to buckle. Like they will not be able to deal with it. So then you have to ask yourself, like, is everyone even capable of doing this? And the answer is probably no. There's probably some people that are just not capable of doing it. Now, as to the psychology behind that is kind of what's fascinating. But
I don't know that I don't know that this is for everyone. I think most people probably should work and try to find the most honest living you could make. Not everybody has a will to lead, and that they're willing to like risk their life and the livelihoods of their family to do it. You know, it's just, I don't know. There's something about me. I did that thing for 30 years. So like, and you know, my story is insane. Okay. I didn't really go to high school. I got through it. I got to college. I was an actuarial science major, which, you know, if you're a mathematician, that's like loser math. But like in the business school at Temple University, where I went to, they were like exalted. And I won all the awards for like the top student, but I got an internship. I got an elite internship that I got fired from. It was like, they looked at me and they're like, no, we made a big mistake, you know? And I experienced basically not being the square peg in the round hole immediately. And, you know, like I just resolved that I was going to beat it. And I did, you know, and then I did, and I endured it for like 30 years. I just kept like, my mission was just to prove them all wrong. Like, no, I can do this. I can make a living. I can build a family. I can do everything that I'm supposed to do. Right. But then I find myself 2 years ago with, in a world where Bitcoin exists, which wasn't, you know, it wasn't the case for me until 2022. And it wasn't the case for anybody for the majority of my career also. So it's not something that people think about natively. Like, what would this all look like if Bitcoin existed, you know? And again, it's not a number go up thing, because for me, it was basically when I lost my job, when they finally wised up and said, you know what, someone's going to do the right thing here and get this guy out of here. The fact that I had a Bitcoin stack is the reason I didn't run back to work in 2 months. You know, it's the reason why I've been able to basically still hold out and say, you know what, I don't have to go. Like, I was in a horrible situation. I was in a terrible situation because I had to, you know, I didn't know about this God thing that much. I didn't see it until about a year after I stopped working. I was like, oh my God, I'm really relying on God a lot. And this is actually a pretty privileged way of being. And don't want to go back to that. This is my best self, right? I'm hungry. I've never been this hungry. I've never been this willing to do things that I have to do. Right. And thus far, just in case anybody is worried or wondering, there's not a single promise to anyone in my family that hasn't been kept, or that anybody got rugged. Right. Kids are still in school. We're still in our house. You know, we still open our pool every year. It's still, you're fighting the illusion. It's like when you fast for many days and like everything in your brain just tells you you're going to fucking die. Excuse me. You're going to die.
Swear away, man. Yeah.
But like, you know how like your brain has a way of playing tricks on you in these certain primal things. This is kind of one of those things where, what I love about like the story you told with Ruth and the God conversation is that all these stories are stories of conviction, and it's conviction that is going to make the difference. I think 5 to 10 years out as to who's still here. It's not going to be whether or not the government passes a law or a quantum computer is invented or not, or something like that. It's going to be it's still going to be how strong is your conviction, and not your conviction in Bitcoin, because that's a bit of a shallow question. It's your conviction in yourself, your own ability to reason, and your ability to know you're right? And it's your ability to do the thing that everyone thinks is unreasonable because you know better.
Yeah, so to that point, one of the things we wanted to get to, and I wanted to get to, is coming off of Las Vegas, where we spent a bunch of time together and smoking cigars, and spent a few hours myself at the poker table. For people that listen to this podcast, know I used to play a little bit of sort of semi-professional, top of the amateur poker class, if you will. And this idea, I think playing poker really prepared me for Bitcoin. And we'll get to the sort of the psychology and everything behind that, but sort of the volatility, dealing with bankroll management, all those sorts of things, there's all inherent in poker. And if you don't do those things well, if you're not disciplined, you will die. But it all comes back to this idea of I built enough conviction in that I know I can run positive over a long enough time frame, and I may have shorter time frames where I lose money, or even need to ask someone, hey, can you help bolster my bankroll for the next couple months till I'm running real bad right now, until I start running good again or running normal again. And it was I started playing probably in 2004. I was in college like everyone else, and it was building 2, 3, 4, 5 years of watching myself consistently be ahead. I wasn't printing money, I wasn't quitting my job, I didn't have a career in it, but it provided me some extra cash, and I knew that I could consistently, quote unquote, beat the game. And so then you get to a point where that's the conviction you have to have, knowing you're right, and then saying, okay, I know I'm right. I know now. Over time, honestly, I bet if I went back today and played real the way I was doing it before, I probably would get beat. Like, people have gotten so much better. There's all this online software now where you can basically build profiles.
Difficulty adjustment.
Yeah.
The difficulty adjustment is pretty severe.
Oh my gosh. Incredible. Yeah. It's I mean, it looks like the Bitcoin hash rate chart. So I probably wouldn't be beating the game today, but back then I knew I could, and it was all about that, saying, I know I'm right. I just have to keep doing this. And then eventually the results came through. So there's something very, very truthful in that idea of building your own conviction, knowing it's true, and then making a decision. I'm rambling a little bit here, but
or knowing it's not and moving on.
So
right?
Also so knowing it's not, moving on, making a different decision. And I'm hearkening back to a Jordan Peterson podcast or interview, I forget, where he was talking about making moral decisions in your life, abiding by sort of the law and legal framework. And then the ultimate, this was kind of around COVID and all that stuff. And then he said the ultimate conviction is knowing what you're doing is morally right and legally wrong, and then still making the morally right decision. But he's like, you have to be 100% certain. Like, you may be persecuted, you may be taken down, even if those things don't happen, even if you're just operating in sort of this illegal black area, you better be damn sure about your moral conviction. You have to be 100% certain. Don't embark on those things. Don't embark on these challenges. Don't embark on these pushbacks or these virtue signals or these, wars of trying to prove yourself. You must know that you are right. And then that's when you move forward, and that's when you take the next step.
It's interesting.
Yeah. That always stuck with me for some reason. Yeah.
To rewind a second, I haven't thought about it like this, but I was a grown man already. I was in 2004, right? Which is really probably right catching the height of the poker boom. The poker,
easily. 04 was the peak
thing,
for sure.
Right. So if people don't know, there's this thing called the poker boom, where everyone in the country, at least in the Western world, was wanting to play poker. It was a big deal. And probably what the big spark for the peak was probably when this everyman amateur named Chris Moneymaker in 2003 just mowed through all these pros and won the main event of the World Series of Poker.
Maybe that was a psyop.
Yeah, I would tend to say not a psyop.
No,
But what's
I'm
interesting
joking,
what's interesting about the poker boom and when it happened, okay, is that like so as a 30-year-old at the time, I can see poker was a potential pathway to financial freedom. And that's how I know people saw it that way who were good enough, who wanted to play. There are people who just wanted to have fun on a Sunday or, maybe take a shot at a satellite and get into the main events that can be on TV or whatever like that. But for a lot of people, I think they took it people who believed in their own talent took it fairly seriously and said, this is maybe actually a decent opportunity at some financial freedom.
I have lots of friends like that. Yeah.
Pulling in, not a full-time job, but just pulling in, say, $10,000 a year off poker is a massive, gives you a lot of breathing room as you're in that 30-year-old stage of your life where you maybe you're getting out of the debt of your 20s and you're starting to hit the black and start a family. It gives you a lot of breathing room. And it's just so interesting that was probably the most culturally relevant movement going into the founding of Bitcoin, right? That was the last like breath of, I think, what people in pre-Bitcoin had at being financially free was the poker boom.
Yeah, I agree. Listen, I have many friends who some are semi-retired, some are still playing quite a lot, but yeah, basically that was their ticket to financial freedom. They excelled at the game. They were better than everyone else, and they made that their ticket to financial freedom. They've never had to answer to anyone or do anything they don't want to, and it is interesting to and also it comes from sort of this idea of a free internet, right? Where all these places where they would spin up a physical address somewhere, the Bahamas, the Caymans, wherever that was conducive to this. And it was like, boom, we have a website live. You can link your bank account. Eventually, the bank started cracking down on that. And that's actually when Bitcoin came into poker, because Bitcoin was a way to get your money onto the platform. And it reminds me a lot of Bitcoin, where you have this open source software, you have this sort of decentralized network of tools and websites and wallets and all these sorts of other things, and then the big bad government shows up, and it's like same thing with poker. First they tried to kill it. They bankrupted a bunch of the exchanges. They came down hard on these people. They threw lawsuits at people, put people in prison. And then what happened? Well, Bovada popped up, and then another place popped up. And it's like, what are you going to go do? Take the servers? Are you going to go get the servers in the Bahamas? Are you going to do that? There's a lot of money coming in here. People are paying taxes on it. And then it's like, oh, well, why don't we try to co-opt it? And it is the parallels to Bitcoin in that sense are just also crazy. Yeah.
All of those early sites turned out to be cheating scams.
Oh, Ponzi schemes. They were shitcoins.
Right.
Yeah.
But they were worse than that, right? Like Ultimate Bet famously was like actually playing against people.
Oh yeah. Oh, the collusion. Right? Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Yeah. So where this is such a parallel to what we see in Bitcoin and adversarial thinking, where people would say, man, these guys are printing money off these sites. They're not going to risk, why would they risk it by being so greedy as to cheat on top of how much money they're making on all this? And yet they did full tilt. Either whether it was absolute cheating or whether it was just rugging your counterparties, right? So you had like at the website level, you had basically fraud. At the custodial level, you had NetTeller rugging everybody, right? You had the government making it hard. Like when you say, oh my God, this prepared me for Bitcoin, like I think the only thing that could prepare you more for Bitcoin is being like super into supplements, and like knowing that like that fraud game too,
Yeah.
But like that adversarial thinking and not trusting a website and not being able to trust what you're seeing with the numbers. Like the numbers on the screen are not what you have, and it's not your money until you take it, right? And even then, it turns out it's not really your money either. But like that is pretty outstanding. From the gameplay itself, I was super into the books and super into 2+2 forums. For some reason,
Classic.
I could endlessly read people's hand histories. I loved it. I loved going through them. But one of my favorite books that hits something we're talking about right now was The Psychology of Poker, and I'm trying to think of who wrote that book.
Was that Dan Harrington?
No, that was his book was on like no limit tournaments.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
This is called The Psychology of Poker, published by 2+2. It was one of those 2+2 books.
Okay.
And really what they did and what they really like labored through in that book was two things. One is, how confident are you in what your opponent has? And two, how much are you willing to bet on how much are you willing to express that confidence in your betting? Right. It's like, it really comes down to, do you understand, do you understand where you are in the game? And do you have conviction? As an order of magnitude, right? Like, you can measure that conviction in magnitude, like how much of your stack are you willing to put behind that conviction? And the best and worst players in the world have super high conviction. Right?
Well, to me, that's what separated me from the people in my circle that were crushing it, that were, living very nice lifestyles off of poker and still to this day was those guys could put people on a hand with like 95% certainty. I mean, they would get it down to like one of two hands, and then they could do the math in their head. I could get it down to like 5 to 8 hands, and then I'm trying to run. I didn't have that super pinpoint ability to put people on hands. And the best players, the people that did the best around me, were those ones that were like, they either had this hand or this hand, and then I had to make a decision, and it was like, that is what separated everyone. And then they would, bet accordingly, bluff accordingly. And I just didn't have that sort of preternatural ability to do that like these guys did.
It's quite a Jedi trick. I still watch a lot of poker on YouTube. I love YouTube now for that. And, you watch all these old hands, and you'll see a guy really taking his time and with a difficult decision, and he'll just tell, like, his opponent might have like King Jack of spades, and he'll say something like, "Do you have King Jack of clubs?"
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's like,
yeah.
Dude, how? I'm still amazed at that ability. You hear those stories about Stu Unger playing gin and just being able to, like he actually stopped. No one wanted to play him anymore because he would just tell you, after 3 moves, like exactly what was in what was in your hand. It's wild. That is, I don't know, look, there are certain people, I think, that are endowed with certain gifts for knowing what the truth is. I was never given that gift in cards. I would get snuck up on by sets like all the time. Like I just for some reason I could never see a set coming. Like if you have a set of fives, I just don't see that for some reason. That was never in my brain space.
You're calling every turn check raise. Yeah.
I just love my ace overpair hitting.
Yeah,
Oh, that's it. I'm done. And it's it was such a weird weakness that I could never, but there are people that have this, do have that supernatural ability. Did I tell you the story at all about my Little League incident?
No.
This is like one of the great ESP stories you'll ever hear.
By the way, before you get into this,
yeah.
Psychology of Poker was written by Alan Schoonmaker.
Schoonmaker, yeah. Got it.
Okay. Right. Now that's cleared up.
Great book.
Yeah.
So, okay, Little League story here. I was not a good athlete as a kid. I think I told you, like, my dad coached me in all my teams, and at some point I started putting the work in like basketball and maybe tennis, and I started like getting, passably passably good to the point where I'm not being like made fun of and bullied about it. But like, baseball never happened. I have like some pretty dark moments in baseball.
Baseball will humble you, man. That's for sure.
Because and the thing about baseball is there's always something that'll happen that no one in the world has thought of, and it's a bit like poker in a certain way. Like that's why guys like Derek Jeter, certain people that have that IQ, are just in another world. So I had one coach that actually believed in me enough to take me out of right field, and he made me the catcher. And so this coach, I'll never forget him. His name was Neil Saban, and he's like, "No, you're getting out of right field. You have potential." I was like 9 years old. Maybe 9 or 10 years old, okay? And he's like, you got potential, you can play catcher, which felt like a punishment if you know
the worst.
People who play catcher.
I did everything I could to get out of catching duties.
Dude, you can't even hang out in the dugout during you have to just be getting your gear on. It's awful.
Your knees hurt, you're sweaty all the time. But I had a good arm, so they would throw me back there because they're like, you're one of 3 people on this team that could throw anyone out stealing. Otherwise, it's just a carousel around the base paths in Little League. Unless you have a good catcher.
So I'm playing catcher on this Little League team. This one coach believed in me enough. And we're in the playoffs. And we're in the last inning of the playoffs, of this playoff game. So I think it was probably the 6th or 7th inning. But there's a guy on first base. And the batter gets a hit, right? Gets a hit. The guy on first base runs to third base. And the ball comes to me. Okay. I'm standing on home plate with the ball. And the guy's standing there on third base. Mind you, we're 9 or 10 years old. I don't know. I can't explain to you what happened in this moment, but this guy just decided to run home. He decided, I know he's standing there, but he's pathetic, and I will get in. And he did. And I was like in such shock. I was so shell-shocked at his decision that I literally stood there and let him slide right into home plate, and I didn't tag him.
He just psychologically destroyed you.
I don't like. He clearly saw, he clearly had the vision, the Emperor Palpatine vision. He saw the future and did it. Like, it's so wild to me. I still to this day, like, I do believe that people have that ability because there's no other way to explain that unless he was like trying to lose. Yeah, I'll never forget it. The coach's son walked right up to me and just slapped me across the face. Like, it lost the game. We lost the game because of this run. It was the winning run.
Unbelievable. And I mean, like, even catching the ball at that age and having it there on home plate, that, not 95 times out of 100, that ball's just going to the backstop and the guy walks home anyway. So the fact that you even had it.
It's like play was dead. It was dead, and I was just going to throw it back, and here he comes. Yeah. And again, it's one of those things I can never possibly explain, but it's this kind of thing I do believe. Like, why do I believe in God? I've seen like these kinds of weird things. Like, I don't know, was I meant to be humiliated and live in this kind of failure at such a young age and have to deal with that? Yeah, I guess. I needed to get strong for some reason and do something really stupid. It's really, really, really incredible. So poker, I think there's some kind of selected class, and these are not the best people in the world, but they are given a gift. And, when Mike McDermott in the movie Rounders says, why do the same, 15 people always get to the end of every tournament, right? I mean,
yeah. Great movie. Did you brought up Stu Unger earlier. Did you ever watch that movie?
The one with Michael Imperioli?
Yeah. What was the name of that movie again? I forget.
I don't remember. No. It's a good title, but his book, the biography on him especially about how he grew up and his dad was a bookmaker or he worked for a bookmaker, and he just like understood degenerates so well. Like, he understood that people who needed action would do anything to keep their action going, and like people always pay their debts because they don't want to be cut off.
Right.
Like, he had the psychology of degenerates like down. It was just down pat. I'm trying to think of the name of the movie.
It's High Roller.
I can't quite.
Yeah. Okay. High Roller.
What a sick, sad story about him, though.
I know.
It's just like the talent. It's just incredible talent that goes to absolute shit.
Yeah, I mean, all that stuff you're talking about with realizing people are degenerates and they want to get it cut off. I mean, that was kind of like the beginning of organized crime, right? In this country. I mean, organized crime's been going on forever, but like, yeah, this concept that we can build this financial empire based on basically people wanting to be degenerates and people wanting to keep coming back but also at the same time having something inside them that says, I need to retain my pride. Like the fact that I'm gambling my family's money away, okay, whatever, that's degenerate, but I'm not going to lose my pride. I'm going to pay my bets back. But now we're just in a weird situation in society where no one pays their bets back and they don't care if they're ruining their family's lives as well. So
I think it's I'll speak personally. This is what I discovered playing poker. It's the not caring that sort of made me flirt with degeneracy. It's like when you can't care, right? You can't care about the money when you play. Otherwise, you're at just a massive disadvantage. The first, not caring is probably the first step to being a decent player. And if you don't get over that step, you're dead. It doesn't matter how well you could read hands, right?
Yep.
You're dead in the water to begin with. Which really makes that contrast with that poker boom in that time going into Bitcoin very interesting, right? Because it's like you take the history of the world leading into 2009, right? And it's just kind of peaked with the last gasp of financial freedom requires not caring about losing money at all.
Yeah, it's so true, and I would look for those people. I could pick those people out at the table where I was like, I'm three barreling this guy every single time because unless he has a monster, he's folding, and if he has a monster, he's coming back over the top of me. And so if he hasn't come back over the top of me, I know he's going to fold to me eventually. I just got to have a big enough stack, and you absolutely could tell those people at the table where they're like, they will not play a hand unless they got the goods, and they're afraid of losing money. They're not there to win money. They're there to not lose money, and that's the mentality difference for sure.
Yeah, I remember Phil Ivey in some documentary was just saying like, you're going to have some nights where you lose $200,000-$300,000. You can't care about that. You can't go home and say, man, what could I have bought with that money? You can't go home and do that. You just got to move on. I'm like, man, that is the definition of a degenerate.
Yeah, but it's also true. It's like that's also how you turn that into an income earning scenario for yourself. And like you were saying earlier, that is the contrast, to Bitcoin.
But that has a price.
Yes. Oh,
so in poker, it has a price.
Yeah.
In Bitcoin, you don't actually incur the losses.
Right. Unless you get washed out and sell, and then
unless you sell. That's right. So like in other words, it's a different
for sure
type of not caring. You have to not care about the conversion price, but as long as you're hanging on, you're still hanging on to the thing. It's a little bit different, right? So it doesn't come with this price of making you a degenerate. It actually does quite the opposite.
Right.
Right. Because you're not thinking about what you could have bought with the money because you are saved. It's still powerful savings. It stays that way just because, and the price doesn't move because of some action you did, or like that unrealized loss doesn't happen because of some action you took or some risk you had to take, which is really partly why you can't care, because you have to always be able to make the best decision you can make.
Yeah.
Right. So like in Bitcoin, there is no decision. You just, you hold.
Right.
And then you do a life.
Right.
Right.
The best decision you can make is only selling or borrowing against when you need the money to get something. Like, yeah.
Yeah. The bankroll management stuff and the risk stuff comes into play
big time
before, like as you enter.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And really does bring to bear like, okay, are you going to blow your entire roll on a Bitcoin stack? Well, if that's true, you're probably going to be a big seller at some point in time. Right. So
be a forced seller. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's right. Right. And so, like that bankroll management's kind of and also bankroll management and risk are pretty important things. And they're great lessons from poker. My partner, Rob Hamilton on Magic Internet Math, podcast. We, he was a poker player, blackjack player. Talk about this stuff all the time. We used to flip coins and develop a sense of risk just from flipping coins and be like, yeah, the likelihood of flipping 10 heads in a row is actually really low,
Oh man, I'm laughing because me and my buddies used to flip coins for like $20, and I mean it was just pure. I'll never forget. We were at the Crossroads Guitar Festival in Chicago. They did 2 of them. We were at the first one, '07. It was like the hottest day. I mean, it had to be over 100 degrees. The infield was covered in like those like the tin stands, bleachers they have. It was just flat. That material was across the field because they didn't want to ruin the field. And then you got like 102-degree sun, 95% humidity. It's reflecting off there. You'd buy a beer. It was cold in a minute and a half. And like, it was just like, you couldn't drink enough water. You were just like, everything was so miserable. You were just like waiting to sundown. And between sets, we were like so miserable and such degenerates. We were just flipping a coin, $20, $20, $20. And I won 5 in a row against my buddy. And I thought he was going to lose his mind. He, like, to your point, like that's statistically, like, I mean, that's, what is that? 1.5 to the 5th, whatever that comes out to. So
that's 1/32.
Yeah,
that's
right.
Okay. Already quite low. That's
so
0.03%.
Yeah, right. Exactly. So, yeah. And so he just about lost his mind. And so that's the reason I was laughing. I haven't thought about
Well, it's such a poker buddy story.
Time. Yeah.
It's a poker buddy story
too,
because like rock, paper, scissors is another big one.
Oh,
and I
yeah.
think that's how I think that's really ultimately how I came up with rock, paper, Bitcoin. So all of the rock, paper, scissors scenarios I've been through, it was stuck in my head. Like rock, paper, scissors is a big part of your life if you are a gambler and you have friends.
Oh, 100%. Yes.
Right? It's just how you settle easy things. It's how you don't argue about things. It's like, we just agree. Let's just do rock, paper, scissors, or odds and evens,
Forget
always a way.
Forget even settling things. I mean, we'd be watching back in my sports ball heyday. We'd be watching football on a Sunday, and someone would be like, "RPS, $20," and you best of 3. All right, okay, and then you would just keep a running tab throughout the day and settle up at the end.
One of the cool things about the poker boom on TV was watching these guys do the same thing. Like, like seeing their strategies for rock, paper, scissors, where they'll tell, they'll tell their opponent, I like rock, and you don't really know what they're
doing. Or you
doing.
flash a scissor, and then,
Yeah, something like it's just so. Yeah. It's of a bygone time, though, and maybe it's a good thing. And maybe it's a good thing that it's of a bygone time. But I do think that Bitcoiners today would benefit from knowing of this lore, and taking some of these. There's a reason why it existed, and it's like a part of the continuum, right?
100%.
It's definitely part of the continuum. It's like it's the same idea of people dreaming and yearning to be free. So it's part of that, and they were using very similar tools, but in a world where nobody had thought of Bitcoin as property or something like that, right? So it had to be degenerate. It was in the peak fiat, the last really gasp before Satoshi unleashing it. So I think it's important for Bitcoiners to know that history and for our culture to have that.
Well, and I will say that far and away, my most orange-pilled friends, my biggest Bitcoiners, are all poker players. The rest of my friends that didn't really play poker, they bought some here and there. They listen to me. They put a little away. They, diversify their portfolio. But the only people that ever truly got Bitcoin, that understand it, that have a material portion of their net worth in it, it's the Bitcoiners. So.
Are you aware, though, of any of those, the celebrity poker players? Are you aware of any of them being Bitcoiners?
Oh yeah, I know. I know for a fact. Phil Locke. Do you know that name?
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Unabomber.
The Unabomber. He's for sure. Yeah.
Okay. Because for a while I didn't, you didn't really hear about it, and maybe drew some conclusions in my head about what that meant.
I know there's definitely other poker players who are Bitcoiners too. There are some other like.
Did they show up to the Bitcoin conference? Did any of them show up
No,
to like?
no. Like there's other people who are in the poker space. They're also Silicon Valley VCs, and they're like 10% of my net worth is in Bitcoin, but 10% of their net worth is $1 billion. So it's like that kind of folk is in the space as well. But I definitely know. I've actually talked to Phil Locke on the phone about Bitcoin. So
Really?
Yeah. So
All right.
he's a big believer for sure, and I do know there's a couple other ones out there as well. But agreed, it's
He's one of my favorites for sure. Like he's just an interesting guy.
oh yeah, very interesting guy. So we got into all the other Bitcoin rabbit holes, all the poisoning of our food and the medical industrial complex and all that military industrial complex. We got into all that good stuff. So I definitely he definitely has the ethos for sure.
All right, that's cool. That's good to know. And if you were to just say one person and it was him, I'm pretty happy to hear that.
Yeah, I mean it would be cool, right? If some more of those folks came in, but like now you're making me think about something here. Like it's interesting, right? In that the poker players made all their money and did everything in sort of that culture and everything you're talking about, and now it's like, how do you also transition that over to to just like storing your wealth and saving money, and then not risking your capital anymore, where it's like risking my capital with outsized risk, even though I know I will have a greater return, is the way I make money. And so, it's almost like a real venture capitalist, not some, close to the money printer idiot who just keeps pouring money, but like a real venture capitalist who is like, okay, I saw the opportunity. I put my money in here. I took this huge risk. I got my return. Now I have this bigger stash to work with, and now I need to go deploy it somewhere else. And not all of us have that ability or that skill set. And it's like, we do need to be diligent about our savings. We do need to look at our opportunity costs of holding Bitcoin versus consuming. And we're not just going to be able to go out and make some big, huge bet that we know has a high likelihood of success because that's our track record. And so it's almost like a different analysis that we're forced to do than a lot of those people. So it may even look like they're being profligate or they're taking unnecessary risk, or how much Bitcoin is too much Bitcoin. But it's like, this is what I do. Like this is how I generate more capital from the capital I have. So
maybe they're a little too comfortable with the likelihood of a total loss, right? Because like the likelihood of a total loss is fairly high if you're not careful and you don't manage your life correctly. Mm-hmm. As a Bitcoiner, I'm saying, as a Bitcoiner, probably my biggest issue with Bitcoin since my entry, it's not like my biggest picadillo with it is how likely it is you can have a total loss. You can have bad custody. You can have bad OPSEC. You can have a bad mind and just get scammed. You can there's a lot of ways you can end up with a total loss, and it's it is pretty devastating. Whereas in poker, even the way you might think of a total loss is there's always another tournament around the corner. You're not thinking about your entire bankroll ever. You never really probably think about, you don't think about your saving. You don't think about your savings that way.
Someone else will always float me a buy-in,
or that's right. And there's a rebuy. There's always a rebuy. There's always another game. There's always somebody will always want me in the game.
Yeah. Yeah. Whereas with Bitcoin, there is no rebuy, and there is no future staking of someone else. Well, I guess maybe there could be, but you got to find quite a generous person to find a Bitcoiner who would go to another Bitcoiner, has proven the inability to properly hold on to their Bitcoin, and then get someone to give them more Bitcoin. That is That is tall timber.
I didn't think we were going to. I didn't think we were going to talk about Luke Dash on this podcast.
Oh, yeah. Oh, gosh. Yeah. Well, let's make sure we trust him with all protocol upgrades. And he can't even custody his own coins. And so, I mean, that.
But he did find somebody. I'm just saying, like, he did find somebody to float him.
Yeah, in theory. Yeah.
But those, you're like, it's exceedingly rare.
Yes.
We'll just say in Bitcoin, exceedingly
and it's very
rare.
common in poker. Yeah.
And yeah, that's right. And because the reality is when you have the talent to, there's a handful of people that, despite the difficulty adjustment, can still win a few big blinds per orbit reliably, right?
Yep.
Whereas I remember we might have talked about this. I remember like even in 2005 or 2006, somewhere around that time, somebody did an analysis on their own data that they had from Party Poker or whatever it is, and they basically had said that the average, basically only like 2% of all poker players are even beating the rake, right? And then even among those 2%, the average is like one big blind per hour or something like that.
Yeah, that was that was me. That's where I was. I was at the very bottom of that group, and then the top 0.5% or 0.05% or whatever were of that 2%. They were taking 90% of it.
But that just reminded me now of another great analogy from poker into Bitcoin, and this idea that all your models are broken. Because you could be a winning player in a moment, or at least based on your history, but you are now a different player in a different game the next time you show up to the table. So what we call out of sample bias is always in play, right? You can never really rely on your statistical analysis of your play to know you're a winner, and that's very hard. So like, where does the conviction come from if it doesn't come from your proof of work, right?
Yep. No, it's true. And I mean, like we said at the beginning, I guarantee if I sat back down in the online forums today, I'm guessing I would get destroyed. I think I would probably get killed. So I can still hold my own at live tables because most of those tables are just tourists and people don't have any patience when they're at those tables anyways. It's just very, very different online when you're playing with seasoned people looking at, thousands of hands a day and studying them and running through them through what's the thing called, the Clover simulator or whatever, and all that kind of stuff. So it's just so advanced from beyond when I was doing it.
Yeah, it's funny, man. I would play like 5 or 6 tables online, and I was pretty I had a very disciplined approach. But then when I would drive to Atlantic City, an hour and a half drive, I would literally say to myself, I'd be sitting at the table and be like, I did not drive here to sit here and fold every hand.
Exactly.
Right. So
that
people
7-8 suited in early position starts to look a lot more attractive,
Yeah, like it's an experience. It's part of the experience. Like I didn't come to this place to sit here and just throw away every hand and not play. Right. I didn't come here to not play.
Yeah.
And so live games are still probably, there's still probably some juice there.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, that's I would be remiss if I didn't say that. I would be nervous about going back to play online. I think I would get my ass handed to me, in all honesty, at this point in time. So
it's even if you trust that these sites are legit.
Well, that's the other thing, which there's a whole bunch of stuff came out about collusion and people working with, or just even having multiple accounts that would sit. I don't know. There was like an image, and who knows what you can trust online anymore, but like they had these poker farms where it was just like 100 people sitting in a room, and they were running their own server bay, and they plugged everything into there, and everyone was just sitting at each other's tables. There'd be like 8 of them at one table and 2 schmucks at the same table, and it's 8 against 2, and everyone knows everyone else's cards. And so, I mean, there's no reason to believe that that's not happening out there. So
no, I mean, and this was like, so before the poker boom and Rounders came out, Rounders had a scene in a casino where it was basically 8 people taking money off of the 2 tourists that would as a revolving door be sitting down. They're like, we're not here to take each other's money. We could have stayed in New York to do that.
Yeah. The two white businessmen with their cocktails sit down, and everyone looks at each other, and they're like, it's hunting time, and they know when to fold to each other, and
that was before any online poker existed. But that was, I think, certainly just pretty much set the blueprint for how collusion works, and people were correct to be afraid of it because it turned out they were doing it. Particularly, famously, Ultimate Bet was like, egregiously found to have had people with basically super users, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Where they could see your whole cards.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, that doesn't. None of that surprises me, and I'm sure the technology back then was way riper for that kind of attack and everything. So
this is part of why Annie Duke went down in this scandal.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I remember that. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a small part of the Bitcoin scene that respects her book, which is fine. But like when people talk to me about it, I'm like, yeah, but I can't really, I can't really get down with her too much. It's not a bad book. Thinking in Bets, it's called.
Yep.
But like
I read it back in the day.
Yeah. But like she is a disgrace.
Yeah. Oh yeah. She's like the Roger Ver. It's like I appreciate where he was coming from, but he made some mistakes.
Well, he didn't cheat the game.
Huh? Well, he tried. But that's interesting though, because he did try to cheat the game. He just lost. That is, another contrast between Bitcoin and poker is that Bitcoin enforces the idea of you can't collude. And that is a huge part of the value proposition that's added to Bitcoin, as opposed to with poker, where you're really relying on the casino or honest parties next to you to not be colluding, and you don't have any way to sort of have a decentralized system that just enforces the lack of collusion.
Good points.
Yeah. Hey, you're making me think about a lot here. Yeah.
I hope you think about this a lot after we're done, just because I think this is such a rich area that you don't, people who say, oh man, there's no new Bitcoin podcast. Nobody talks about this stuff.
No, they don't. And I can tell you right now, my poker buddies, a few of who I know listen to this show, they'll have a lot of commentary. We'll have a good group chat going after this one for sure.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, all right. What else? I'm curious. Speaking of poker, and a lot of poker is actually statistics and doing the math, running the odds. Should I chase this flush draw? All this other stuff. I was a math minor in college. I always excelled in math, but I was really good at statistics, numbers, probabilities, and I was just terrible at calculus and that sort of thing. Very good at geometry, discrete mathematics, whatever you want to call it. But I was so bad at calculus. I don't really know why. I was actually good at linear algebra as well, but bad at calc. And I know you guys on the podcast you do with Rob, you guys talk a lot about calculus and elliptical curves and derivatives and all this stuff and getting into the numbers. So I'm curious, you have much more knowledge about mathematics than I do. Do you have a similar dichotomy of your math knowledge in your life, and do you have any insights as to, like, is there a type of person that trends towards one to other, and then like is there sort of the super math person that just both of them are like, click?
So I'm just like you. You basically described me to a T. I really struggled with calculus. I got D's in college. When I got to college, I was getting like D's in calculus. And I never quite recovered. I never really got a grasp of it. Part of the problem was like I didn't really go to high school. I learned I could cut school, and I did it for like years until I got caught, and then I had to go back. And I did really well on my math SATs despite this fact. And that's how I got into college. But like I didn't things like the trigonometric identities, you know, things like there's certain things I didn't bother with, and it really caught up with me. Caught up with me in calculus. So like, you know, there's certain trigonometric identities that are just, you just have to know them. And if you do, okay, you know, things are get easier down the line. I think part of this issue is it's the dichotomy between pure math and applied math. And it sounds like people like you and me, I think we seem to like pure math.
Yes.
Even though like I don't consider statistics math, but I mean, I became an actuary because nobody knew what to do with me, but they're like, you like statistics, you know, you should do that field. And also like you could overcome a lifetime of kind of fucking up if you just pass those tests. So like that all kind of came together for me. I still managed to get fired from an internship and get blackballed from the city I was living in but regardless, right? It's like, there's a reason why I gravitated towards that field, but like pure math versus applied math, pure math tends to like algebra more and discrete math and things like that, geometry. Applied math tends to like physics, calculus. So there's like that piece of it.
I sucked at physics too. I was not good at physics. Yeah.
Like when Rob and I talk about this stuff on the podcast, like I'm a pure math guy, and I have a daughter. She's about to be 21. She's finished her junior year she's a math major, a pure math major. She's doing research this summer in algebraic number theory. She got the research job because she's the only person who applied for it. Wow. Everybody else was applying for physics and analysis and that type of stuff, and she's like, no, the secrets of the universe are here.
Wow.
You know?
Yeah.
And
maybe I'll have to have her on the pod.
Yeah. I'm trying to get her on the math podcast. At least we had Alan Farrington yesterday, and I thought she should have come and joined us, but you know,
that would have been great for her. Yeah.
The pure math is if there's an end to the means, if there's an end to it, pure math is like how you discover yourself. And I think there's like linear algebra, there's an applied version of it. Like my daughter says she took in linear algebra her first semester, but it was called matrices. It wasn't linear algebra. To me, linear algebra is more vector spaces and more of the abstract algebra piece of it, which is super interesting. That's where the magic happens.
Yeah, agreed.
Right. Whereas matrices and eliminations and eigenvalues and eigenvectors and those types of things are more, well, there's a lot of magic that can be gotten from there. I mean, being able to, have a million dimensional system, which now allows us to have AI and all the things we have, is all part of that power, right? It's very powerful.
Yeah.
But that's not, to me, that's not where the ends are. The ends are like, first of all, what does it take for me to stick with, to try to keep learning something? And like a lot of studying math was praying to God, like, please let me get it. Like when I was going to school, it was just me and the textbook. We didn't have YouTube or.
Oh, same here, man. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So like now it's a little bit, there's a little bit, you have more resources before you have to like really pray. You have other levers you can pull, right? But when you're just sitting there suffering with your one textbook and you don't know if you had a psychotic professor that picked a bad book.
I'll never forget. I had one story. It's like imprinted in my mind. One of those things that's just like seared in my memory from my childhood, where my mom told me that I could go over to my friend's house, but I had to finish my math homework, and I couldn't get it. I could not get it. And she was like, she was like, all right, appreciate your trying. You're not getting it. Let's see if you can get it done in the car. Couldn't get it done in the car. We got to my friend's house, and she's like, you're not done. You're headed back. And
It's a good mom. What was the subject? Do you remember?
It was it was like something with like like powers of fractions, and I couldn't do the foiling right, and it was just like I was doing the order wrong, and I just like it was absolutely insane, and I couldn't get it, and it was like one of the most to your point, like I would have killed for a YouTube video, or like even AI. If we were just punched in AI, at least got the right answer out of it. Been able to hang out with my friend, but I wouldn't have learned anything. But anyway, sorry to cut you off. You just brought that
but like that
roaring
those
back
are the
to my head.
But that's what like to me, what's beautiful about studying math is it brings to bear again, like it's you, yourself, and God.
Yeah.
Like that's pretty much what it's. So I focus on math as a liberal art and as an art in general, because that's really like, again, it's the same. It brings to bear the same thing that if you were blacksmithing, and you just have to dominate the medium to turn a block of copper into a bracelet, right? It doesn't happen until you dominate the medium, right? It's just the same way you don't get to, you don't get to play with your friend until when you dominated the medium, and when you get it.
Yeah.
And it's like,
Yep. And
I really love this thing of knowing that you know something.
Yep.
Because that is really probably what we are at the bottom peak of. Like we're at the worst bottom peak of people thinking they know things but are wrong, which is like the worst. It's like the worst place you could be in life. That's that Mark Twain quote. It's not what you don't know that gets you. It's what you think you know, but just ain't so.
Yeah. Thanks, cable news. Yeah.
So I love this domain is of knowledge is like, how do you know when you know? And I know that I know you. There's ways other than studying math that you can engage with that, but no one seems to care or want to be pushing math as a pathway to that. And so I feel like I see the opportunity. I was not a mathematician. I was, again, an actuary. I would have flunked out of a math program. And I may, even today, no matter how much I've self-studied to get through my career, I probably would still flunk out of a math program.
Well, there's a reason I was a math minor and not a math major, because there weren't enough courses I could pass in the math program to be an actual math major. I had to select out the probability courses, the linear algebra courses, and then leave everything else to the side and be like, minor's good enough. So,
because it's a different, they're asking for something different from you when they're testing you than when they're asking you as a human being, how confident are you that you know what you know?
Yeah.
Right. And that's like, to me, that's where when I say like I want to build people, that's the basic building block through which I want to build people, which is like let's get real and rigorous about what we think we know.
I love that. And man, it's so funny you say that, and because that math angle of it is so true, and then also the fact that I never thought to pray for my math homework, but I probably should have done that. But God is another one of those things where you know it's true because you engage with it, you pray with God, you listen to God, you see things in your life change, and you watch it change. And I've taken a lot of flack on Nostr from the atheists, the hardcore science people that are like, don't trust, verify. You can't verify a God. And it's like, man, God has verified himself like 100 times to me, man. Like there is nothing more certain in my life than God being real, because he has made that, and I have verified that, and it's crazy because that's sort of this spiritual, ephemeral relationship you have with verifying something. And then there's the like, what number did you get at the end? Is the proof correct? And then you prove things true that way. And it's like both are valid ways of proof, but one is so tactile, real world, and one is literally invisible.
It's like really interesting to be engaged with this. My kids go to Waldorf schools. I don't know if you.
Of course, yeah,
heard.
we have one here in Chicago,
okay.
half a mile from me. So
one of the things in my Math Academy building that I've put a lot of Rudolf Steiner's talks, like the way to consume. So Rudolf Steiner, for anyone who doesn't know, he was a Renaissance man of Austria / Germany, late 1800s, early 1900s.
Peak civilization, by the way. Austria, Germany, maybe. late 1800s. It's pretty close. Yeah.
So he had a lot of views about a lot of things, but also started this school based on a subset of his views about child development and readiness, etc. But in order to read him, right, he didn't write books. He didn't write books with an editor or anything like that. He just gave a lot of talks. And so the books you would get are like translated in German of his talks. They're difficult. They're like really quite difficult to read and consume. So I had the bright idea when I was bringing all these math books into my website and, creating really effective summaries of them with great UX. I had this bright idea of like, well, why don't I bring in all of Rudolf Steiner's like work, right? And so now Rudolf Steiner's work is part of that knowledge system. I brought in Satoshi's 540 whatever Bitcoin talk posts, and now when I make these books, I ask to draw connections, and so one of the things that it ends up telling me is that Steiner in the matter of like what is a proof, so in the matter of like okay, what does it mean to verify something, he was very big on saying that that it is possible and there is a rigorous framework for proving things in what he called the invisible realm. People might call it spiritual. He wouldn't have, but there was a material realm, which is our physical nature. Then there were like many dimensions of an invisible realm. There is a spiritual realm. There's an astral realm, but in the invisible realm, he basically said it's definitely possible. And if there is a rigor, there's a rigor to proving things in that realm. But he would say that human beings hadn't evolved yet really to be able to do it, but they will, and this framework exists. And so this document that I created then drew this line to Satoshi, who created a framework to prove things in the invisible realm, which to me is undeniably like interesting.
Yeah,
right?
no,
like that's exactly what he did.
Yeah,
and so maybe we did evolve enough in 100 years for somebody to show that Steiner was right about what he thought. Right, he was on the right track, and maybe we are on our way to more of this, to more of understanding and being able to, instead of just saying, you know what, it's my word and it's my belief, which I think is really powerful. I think it's actually the most powerful thing to do is to say, I can't prove it to you, yet I'm still sure,
yeah.
Right? And I'm willing to get wrecked or win on that bet. I'm willing to put my chips in because I'm sure.
Yeah, well, that was like the 12 disciples, right? all but one of them met a horrible, horrendous death because they were like, I'm so sure of this. I know this happened, and I'm putting my chips in, and I'm now going to be hung upside down, and I'm willing to die for it.
But like, there's a great power in being that.
Oh yeah.
In faith in the face of not being able to, quote unquote, verify it or prove it, right? So I wouldn't discount, if I were one of these Bitcoiners in this conversation, I wouldn't discount the power of somebody's conviction here, number one. Number two, I think you have to be humbled into understanding that you have not verified your Bitcoin. I promise you, there's not a single Bitcoiner, I don't care who it is, there's not a single Bitcoiner that that I can't deconstruct and say you haven't verified your Bitcoin, because they haven't. So so here's an example, right? Everyone, one thing Rob and I talk about a lot on our podcast is like you should go to the Bitcoin store and ask to see the manager and have him prove to you that your Bitcoin is actually real before you buy it. What would that look like? They could show you a public key, and you can verify that public key resolves to a private key before you hand the money over. Instead of what everyone does is they hand the money over, jump off a cliff, and then pray that it hits an address, and then there's the verification, right? I mean, I've been searching for an exception. I've been searching for somebody to say, no, I totally verified my Bitcoin before I bought it, right? So like, I think that people need to get a little humble with don't trust, verify, and start thinking like, you know, we're not even close to getting to shit on somebody for what they're doing, because we have not come close to verifying ourselves.
Yeah, well, I also see just a level of anger in these people that immediately throws up sort of my spidey senses, my psychological defense system, whatever you want to call it, where it's like, if there's anyone this angry about something, like they're unsure of it themselves. Like they are projecting power, you know, back to poker, you know, I'm all in. That, you know, that is a classic trope. Like, okay, this guy's
weak is strong, strong is weak.
Yeah, right, exactly. And it's like there's something to be said about someone that needs to come out with such animosity, fervor, assuredness, and just straight up anger. That's like, I don't think you fully verified your position, because you wouldn't be projecting like this if you had.
It's, you know, it's a humility exercise, and not a humiliation exercise, but it's a humility exercise. And I love the expression "stay humble, stack stats," but it's aspirational.
Yeah,
it's not. It's like it's like all with men are created equal. It's like it's aspirational.
Yeah,
it's meant. So I think, and you want to view it that way. You want to view it like, no, dude, we're not there. No one is.
Yeah.
Okay. You can go. You can criticize the person who coined that phrase and the acts, like things that he does, as not humble and whatever. But like the reality is it's aspirational, and I like it because it is an accountability mechanism by saying it.
Well,
so hold me accountable.
That's why he invented the phrase, was because he was not acting that way. He said, I came up with that phrase to hold myself accountable, because it's something I need to aspire to, because I'm not doing that.
So don't trust, verify is also aspirational.
Yes. Yeah.
It's not, nobody has arrived there. I can assure, like, I am certain of this. There isn't a person who has arrived at verifying. We're not dead yet, and the life is still going on, and you still have every opportunity to make a mistake, right? And B is, you haven't actually verified your stack right now as it is. Almost everybody took a giant risk to acquire it. And I will say this, if you don't know, if you're weak on the technical side of it, whether it's the math or whether it's understanding the protocol or understanding what an address even means, you are a second-class citizen in this space at best. And, that's like what I care about. And I think a lot of the problems we have are just people lashing out at the realization that they're second-class citizens. And it's true. And what do we do about it? I mean, if you're all in already, then there's nothing to do than to get to work and learn. Just get to work and learn. And I'm going to do everything I can to make that easier. That's like, I feel like that's what God wants me to do. You know, he doesn't want me working a job that distracts me from this. For some reason, I've got to be making materials and classes and resources for sincere people who want to strengthen themselves here, right? I mean, there are people who teach you how to dry shoot around your house, and that's another form of self-determination. This is something I see a clear line on, and it's not to disparage people. It's to humble us enough so that we actually experience the upgrade, so that we can actually experience the Bitcoin dream that we all have.
Well, I mean, listen, I was the guy who would lash out at people with intense fervor and certainty. And so like, I had to, I haven't fully humbled myself on that front, but I'm getting better.
A little karma then?
Yeah.
A little karma?
Yeah. I'm getting better. At the same time, to your point, like some time down the road, or I've even had situations where people have come up to me and they've been like, hey, help me do this, help me out with this. Or, I even had people just come up to me and be like, hey, I heard you talking about how Ethereum sucks and I should roll it all into Bitcoin. Like, help me do that. You don't need to explain it to me. Just help me do it. I've helped multiple people with that, got them into their own wallets. Now they're in self-custody and, Ethereum's, down, I don't know, 50% against Bitcoin, maybe more since that time. And it's just like, well, like God had me there for that person, like to be their support. And I needed to be, and you know what? They're never going to get it. Like, or maybe one day they'll get it. I don't know, but they're not going to do the verification. They're not going to figure it out on their own. I can help them verify it. I can help them do it. But like, I was put there to be like, hey, someone's going to come to you. You're, get them on the right path. And like, that's what you're here to do. And that's your mission. And so, there's verification of what you're doing just with the people that show up, you're interacting with, and then explaining the verification aspect of things too, which I guess is all very meta. I don't really know where I was going with that even.
Well, these things are supposed to call us into being better. They're not supposed to be excuses or reasons why, like, reasons to act like a shithead. So like, when you're using things like slogans like "Don't Trust Verify" to justify why somebody who believes in God is wrong.
Right.
To me, that's like, that's hubris at the highest level. And you're abusing a potential, something that could be of real potential value. That's all. It's like, I kind of view it as, these people are maybe lost because it's no different from people who use Austrian economics also to like make bad cases. I see this all the time. They Austrian economics, the purpose, it's very powerful because in the domain of not overvaluing what you've been taught as science, it's very, very powerful. Okay. But in the domain of being science, it's like a total scam and you don't want to go down that road.
Yeah.
It's not supposed to be a new science that you worship or a god, it's almost a new god that failed and you can get wrecked. So you want to take things that are powerful and use them powerfully and not like twist them and end up being the same hubristic person you were. You're not going to make it. Dude, we're not all going to make it on the frontier. It's a dangerous place. We have to be our best. Like this is like trying. I think more people are going to make the NBA than are going to be really make it successfully with Bitcoin.
Interesting. I mean, that's an interesting thing to think about, and I don't know if I agree with you on that, but
I don't know if I'm right about that, and I'm not invested in being right about that. I'm invested in playing my game that way.
However, I do agree with the sentiment that the frontier is incredibly difficult, and a few of us are going to get scalped along the way, and that's the reality of the situation. We're going to lose a few people to typhoid fever and not fording the river for sure.
Yeah, just to be clear, for me, that's my mindset because that's what calls me into playing my best game is to act like it's hard.
Well, it is hard. You don't even have to act like it. I mean,
right?
It is hard. Yeah.
But like and trying to attack it at the most elite possible level, right? Never letting up, never making excuses and thinking that I got this or anything like that. This one is like. You have to outrun the bear. It's not outrunning the other guy. This one is like you really have to outrun the bear, and you can never really know you're good, and you can never rest on it. And so that's why I approach it like trying to make the NBA or something like that. You have to be so all in. You have to train all day long for it, which is, you can't get caught up in hubristic narratives. You can't get caught up in low thinking narratives. You can't allow yourself to do that. That's how I approach it.
No, I mean, the parallels to professional athletics is 100% dead nuts on. I mean, there's just countless examples of guys who had all the talent in the world, get to the NBA, get to the NFL, get to MLB, whatever, and they don't take it seriously. They rest on their laurels and they fizzle out. They develop drug habits. They just don't try. And then, the guy, everyone knows the guys like Kobe and MJ and,
That's my boy Jalen Brunson, Chicago guy, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you see those videos of him working out with his dad as a kid.
Yeah. I mean,
his dad's just like, one more, do it again, follow through. You didn't follow through, you do it again.
Yeah. Speaking of with their dads, a Tiger Woods or pick your.
But nothing's given. The point is, nothing's given, and no one's coming to save us. And it's important to have an ethic that is of somebody who's humble, looking up to an elusive victory, than thinking you're already there and that you already won, and that you can rule out someone's belief in God. Are you kidding me? I'm sitting here as a Jewish guy going to church with my wife because I'll take God wherever I can find it.
I love it. Yeah.
And that's probably the best way I can sum up, how I think you need to play the game.
Well, speaking of professional athletics, welcome to the team, man. Oh man. All right. Well, I'm sure we could keep going. We're definitely going to have a part 2 and follow up to this for sure.
We'll do the home and home. So we'll do the part 2 on my channel. We'll do the home and home.
All right. Perfect. Yeah. There's 9 more topics we could get into here. Unfortunately, I have to go look at some potential houses here. By the way, I'm never trusting any of these doom and gloom real estate people ever again. I don't know how it is out by you, but I'm bidding against 10 other people on every just a normal run of the mill property. I can't buy anything. Our place sold for 15% above ask before our first showing. We didn't even have a showing and it was already sold.
Really? So the real estate market is
it's
pretty hot.
Yeah. But all I hear is, it's crashing and there's all this debt rolling and default rates are creeping up and foreclosures are up and these markets are crashing and no one's buying and no one's selling. And I'm like, have you been out in the real estate market lately? Because that is not what I'm seeing. And then they're aspirational doomerisms. Yeah, seriously.
It's not the reality. It's aspirational.
And seriously, as a guy who was in workout, I would sit just for ever since 08, 09, once the Fed said we're putting money into the economy forever, we're going to prop this thing up. The Fed put workout default distress. It was never the same again. They would just paper over everything. So it was we're just going to socialize the losses with inflation. And I just, for 17 years, I would just sit on panel after discussion after, this is the year, things are cracking here, there's breaking here, oh my gosh, default rates are up, the end of the world's coming, we have all this mortgage debt rolling over. Well, it turns out all the debt always gets rolled over 100% of the time. No one's not rolling over the debt because that's a default. And then if there's any trouble at any of the banks, either they're getting bought by a bigger bank who will get funded by the Fed to buy the smaller bank, or the Fed will just put money into the bank directly. And it's all of these problems are never going to materialize. It was 17 years of 2 weeks, and it's definitely the same things going on in the real estate market. And so I say unfortunately because it sucks, and I just want to buy a place that I can move my family into and have a little more space. But apparently that is an impossibility. So,
well, I wish you luck. I hope this episode ends well for you and ends soon.
I hope it airs and I'm under contract on a place. That's what I hope for. So
let's speak that into existence.
Yeah, I'm going to manifest that. So
awesome.
Yeah. Well, Brian, aka Fundamentals, thank you so much for coming out. Yeah, I mean, we didn't even get into the Bitcoin for Corporation stuff. Your book, there was 900.
Yeah, we'll get there.
Well, we'll get into all this stuff.
A lot of podcasts left.
Yeah, we'll do. We'll do the home and home like you said, and then we'll make this a more than once a year event as well. So, where do you want to send people to check your stuff out? And before we head out here?
So magicinternetmath.com is the website of the Math Academy. YouTube.
And
Magic
the podcast,
Internet Math.
right?
We have the podcast.
Yeah.
But YouTube, Magic Internet Math, we just had Alan Farrington on. He was our first guest, and it was a real fun, great banger conversation, and I think a lot of people will get a lot out of. So that's sort of building on my YouTube site with a lot of the math resources. We have magicinternetmath.com, and the YouTube is really where a lot of it is getting built. And then my Twitter is at fundamentals21m.
And your master?
NPUB big string. No, my master's fundamentals with a PH.
PH, yeah. And the fish logo.
Yeah.
So
And the fish logo.
I don't know if you have any imposters out there or not, but if people are looking to find you.
I've been told. I got a lot of them on Telegram, unfortunately.
Yeah. Telegram, yeah, forget about it. That's just a cesspool.
Well, thanks for having me, man. I really enjoyed this.
Yeah, of course.
First of many.
Yeah, first of many. We'll do it again soon. And as always, go to the website, Sovereign, SOVREIGN.io. That's the best way to get in touch with us. You can also find us on LinkedIn, Twitter, Sovereign X, and I'm Plebe Anon on Nostr if you want to check me out personally, or my real name, Brandon Karpeles. You can find me on Fiat Legacy, LinkedIn there, and reached out as well. But as always, go to the website. That's the best way to get a hold of us. And thanks so much for listening. Really enjoyed the conversation. And until next time, take it easy.